One of the top questions when you hit this test is like, when do I clear the fractions out? And when do I just have to add and make common denominators? Is this one of those kind? So how do you tell? You can use normal rules of solving equations whenever there's an equals, which means you can multiply both sides by like x plus 4 on this one, because it's an equals. If the problem was a less than, you can't multiply by a variable on both sides. I made a special video explaining that to you and showing you why that wouldn't work. So bottom line, this one's an equals, so you can clear the fractions, which means you'd multiply to get rid of them. But the first thing you do on every single problem is try to factor it. If you can factor it, you should. That's why that's my favorite saying. So go ahead and factor this. There's only one part to factor. Factor it. Now, I don't think that this is a particularly complicated test. It's just that there's so many little algebra things you've got to do perfectly right. You're going to have like 9 steps. And each step is a chance to mess up a negative or not, combine like terms right. So basically it's really, really algebra intensive. And I have worked really hard with you to try to fix your algebra. We started with the basic 20, brought the average score up to like 17 out of 20. Then we went to the first 20. And I actually have the math on this. I know that I got 40 out of 44 of you up to proficient. We consider 15 out of 20 to be pretty good. Okay, and we got 40 out of 44 of you to that. And so bottom line, I feel like your algebra skills are way better than they were, but this is still going to have a ton of algebra. But I'd still bet that if I call in a random kid, they factored this right. So let's see if I'm right. Random kid. There we go. It is row 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's nobody in row 6, so I'll reverse it. Row 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last person. All right, Noah, step up. What does that factor to?
X minus 1, x plus 4.
Anybody agree with him? A lot of nodding. All right. I know if you're a struggler on factoring, you always have to start one step at a time. I know it's smart to do the signs next. And then, how do I make a 4? Well, it's 2 and 2. And that doesn't work, because when you check out here and here, a 2 and a 2 would just cancel each other out, so it's got to be a 4 and a 1 plus 4 minus 1. Okay, awesome. Now, that's our new problem. Next question, where does that negative go? Some kids think it goes on the top and the bottom. What do you think? Just the top? Or top and bottom? The quiet is scaring me. If you multiply a negative on the top and the bottom, wouldn't they cancel then? And all of a sudden the negative would be gone. So that would mean every negative would disappear. So that can't make sense. The negative goes on the top. You could actually put it on the bottom, but that'd be dumb. You mess up your nice clean factors. All right, so now, can I multiply this? Yes, because it's an equals. If it was greater or less, I wouldn't be able to multiply on both sides. I'd only be able to add the fractions over here together. You'll do that on a different problem. All right, so now we have to multiply. And in this problem, it's so complex that I would just do one step at a time. Let's multiply by x minus 1 on both sides. And I hope you know that it has to go on all 3 parts. Because why? Because this side, it is distributing to both parts of it. There, I just multiplied everything by x minus 1. Now, can you clear the fractions? That's the whole point. That and that are gone. Look, no more fraction. It's just a 1. Now you got to leave that minus alone. We'll deal with it later. And multiply this all out. And it equals, that cancels that, negative 16 over x plus 4. All right, random person, multiply that thing out for me. It is Winston. Multiply this out for me.
3x.
Feel like you're just starting. That times that.
3x to
Squared.
3x squared, sorry, and then minus 3x.
Minus 3x, good. Over x plus 4. Now, I totally get some of you want to distribute the negative in right now. And you could, but let's not. Like for right now, all he did is multiply this, and I'm okay with that. Okay. Are the fractions all cleared yet? Hudson, what should I multiply by next? Everybody do it. Now's the time to distribute that negative. Plus 3x. That is going to for sure get kids on the test. They won't be careful with their negative, and they'll think it's minus 3x when it's actually plus 3x. Each of these steps isn't like super hard. It's just so many chances to mess up your algebra. All right, now I have two choices. I can just add 16 to both sides. That totally works. Or I could have added 3x to both sides, and that totally works. But what am I doing? I'm trying to set it equal to 0. I personally am going to add 16 to both sides so that it's equal to 0, even though my lead term is negative. I know it's a little annoying that this is negative right here, but I can fix it by factoring out a negative 1 in a minute. This 3x and this plus x makes 4x. And then the 16 and the 4 makes 20. Can anybody verify that I did that right? I think I did. Get the same thing as I got? All right. Now I got to factor out the negative 1, otherwise I'll never be able to factor it. You see why I thought maybe it'd be good to have an extra day to prepare for this test? This is complicated. I factor out that negative 1. Hudson wants to talk to you again. Perfect. And then, I know these numbers look nasty, but I already checked and there's no GCF to factor out. Like if there was a 3, I could factor out everything, I would. So I guess I got to just do a negative 1 and then 2 sets of parentheses and fight my way through it. But it isn't that hard if you just do it one step at a time. Maren Sabins, what has to go in the front of each of these parentheses?
3x?
Yep. 3x and 3x, or 3x and x. Good. And then what signs do I have to have? Noah, what about the signs? Minus, minus, plus, minus, plus, plus. Yep, because that's negative, we have to have 1 minus and 1 plus. I'm not sure which spot they're in, but you just pick one and slap it in. And last but not least, 20. I'm pretty sure that you're going to use 10 and 2. Given that knowledge, go ahead and, 5 and 4, go ahead and try it, but I don't think it's going to work. So I think it's going to be 10 times 2. Figure out the right spots to put them. Lux, where do you think we should put the 10 and the 2?
Maybe -2 and +10.
And let's check it. That makes 30. That makes -2. Too big.
Oh, then it'd be -10 +2.
All right, -10 plus 2. Outside is 6x. Inside's -10x. Together that makes -4x. Yay. All of that work and it's still not done. Why isn't it done? Just because you don't have the answers. This one's super easy. X equals -2. But everybody, please reassure me that you know how to do that. The 3x minus 10 has an answer, and it's not 10. Jaden. 10/3. If you don't know how she did that, it's like this, and then you add 10, and then you divide by 3. There's your 2 answers. Now, it says the word extraneous right there, so it makes me address the fact that there's a chance that one of those doesn't work. Do you remember that that's in this chapter too? There's a chance. So how do I check it? You go back to the original, and you see what are the things that would have killed my function in the first place? -4 would have killed it, and 1 would have killed it. And I didn't think that either of those was an answer. Like if one of these had been -4, I would have been like, wait, it can't be that because you can't have 0 on the bottom. So you check and see what would make your equation die and make sure you didn't think that that was one of the answers. That's probably going to happen on this test. I don't even know, honestly. But if I was making the test, I'd have one hard problem where you got to check and make sure the answers actually work. So these actually are fine. They don't kill my original equation. Yes?
When you go back up to the original problem, how come you couldn't multiply x plus 1 and x minus 1 at the same time?
You could. You absolutely could. It wouldn't have been wrong. It's just so intense algebra-wise that I would save that to only if you're a straight A student. And you pretty much are, so if you want to do it double, totally okay. I did do it, I just did it one step at a time. I multiplied everything by x plus 4 on this step, or I'll highlight it. I have multiplied by everything by x plus 4 right there. And then I multiplied, oh, I already erased it. The other one was up in the other part of the work. So I did end up multiplying by both things. I just did them in 2 separate steps. Then you can multiply them all at the same time, and it would have worked. Okay. That was pretty intense. Here's another intense question. If you think you should multiply both sides by something, you got to check yourself because you can't do that. When it's a greater than, you can't multiply by an x on both sides. So we're not starting by multiplying, but you can always start with factoring. Worst case scenario, I'll bring you scratch paper. We'll only have like 2 more questions. Just stay with me as much as you can. I guess another way to say it is you could get a blank notability doc and just copy the problem. Okay. As usual, they factor. So this part factors. Jaden, what did that factor to?
X minus 6 and x minus
yes, this fact that that was positive there, and I knew I had to have at least one negative because there's a negative in it, means they both had to be negative. Both signs were negative. Okay, good. And now this is a pain in the butt only because I'd make a really long number line. There are so many things you got to test around. You got to test around positive 6. You got to test around positive 1. Negative 3. And positive 2. Almost every kid will have those 4 numbers. But the difference will be that some people will fill these in, some people won't, and that will get you marked wrong if you fill them in when you're not supposed to. So think about it. If you're really not sure, just try the 6. Stick it in the equation and something happens. And it either turns out bigger than 0 or it doesn't. Well, the 6 ends up making this part 0, which means the whole thing is 0. And is 0 greater than 0? No, 0 isn't greater than 0. And so then this doesn't work. So you leave it empty. And in fact, you leave them all empty. Because all of those things are called zeros. They'll all make it equal 0. And we don't want 0. We want bigger than 0. Okay, so they say all empty. The next chance to mess up is in shading intervals that you shouldn't shade. Like, we got to see where this thing works. And by works, I mean is bigger than 0. Please take a second and test all the intervals. A lot of kids will do like 3 of them right and 1 of them wrong. It's going to happen. Please double check yourself. And also assume that if you shade an interval, the intervals right next to that usually don't work. That's not a for sure thing. It's kind of like me saying, grab a random day in July in Minnesota. It's probably pretty warm because July's a pretty hot month here. Could it be cold? Yeah, there's July days that are cold, so it could happen. But almost always, if you shade an area, the spots on both sides are not shaded. But you should test because you never know when that little exception is going to come up. But be suspicious if you're like, I shaded an area, and the area right next to it I also shaded? Probably messing up. All right, just in case you don't know what I'm even talking about, I'm going to stick this 7 in. Here, and here, and here, and here. And all I care about is not the grand total answer. It's, is it positive or not? I would sum this up as being positive, because 7 minus 6 is positive. That one's positive, that one's positive, and that one's positive. Even if I square it, well, it's still positive. Even if I cube it, it's still positive. So that whole thing comes out positive. Is that bigger than 0? Yes, it is. Should have shaded here. Because when I stuck it in, I got positive, 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 positive. Now, on the next one, I would bet that you're going to, when you stick in like 3, that something's going to turn negative. The question is whether 2 of them will turn negative or just 1 of them. All right, I'm testing 3. Putting 3 here and here and here and here. Spencer, would you please clarify then if it's positive, positive, negative, positive, or what? So here's the first one, right here. Negative. Next one.
Positive.
Next one.
0.
3 plus 3, right here.
Oh, yeah, 6.
Positive. And then the last one. 3 minus 2, and then squared, positive. Good. So that was only 1 negative in there. But that 1 negative makes the whole thing negative because they're multiplied. So then that's negative, which is not bigger than 0. I didn't think it was going to work, and it didn't work. Yay. Maren Sabins, have you tested 1.5 yet?
I've got halfway through.
Okay, let's do it. I'm gonna put 1.5 in here, 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 and here. Would you tell me, what'd you get for the first one when you put 1.5 here? Positive or negative?
Negative,
All right, I agree it's negative. 1.5 here?
positive,
Positive, I agree. 1.5 here?
positive.
I agree. And last is 1.5 here.
Also positive?
1.5 minus 2? It's like $1.50, take away $2?
Yeah, negative.
That one is negative.
But then what about the square?
Oh, you mean like, oh, then you got to square it. Good catch. It would have been negative, but then you square it, makes it positive. Very nice. I didn't even think of that. Whew. Okay, so we just tested and it came out negative. Are negatives bigger than 0? No. That's one of those moments where the weird exception happened. Usually right next to an empty spot. Usually it'll shade in. It didn't. We just tested 1.5 and we got negative, positive, positive. Even when you put it to the third, a positive number is still to the third. But the gotcha was right here. I thought it was going to be negative, but then it was squared right here. And once you take negative numbers, square it, it comes out positive again. All right, I think that's good enough. I think you've got the idea. I'm going to do 0 in my head real quick, and I get negative, negative, positive, positive, and that's positive, and positives are bigger than 0, so I'm pretty sure that works. And I assume it doesn't work at the end. Can anybody tell me, did you check a big negative number? Doesn't work?
It's negative.
Okay, thank you. All right, cool. Now, this kind. We did this yesterday, literally, for 2 days. You're supposed to be able to check this and see what makes the top 0, see what makes the bottom 0, put all those important points on the number line, and test around them. This is a good summary problem. And I'll pause for a second while you please give this one a shot. We're almost done. There's usually a kid who gets stuck on factoring this. I just get you started. When you take the x out, that's in both of them, that's called GCF, then it's x squared minus 9. And that makes it go, oh yeah, and then I can factor it again. That's how you start. I think I factored it right. Anybody verify that it's x minus 6 and x plus 2? Okay. All right. Now, this is just too much of a pain. Like, it's got so many little intervals. You'd have to test 0, -3, 3, 6, and -2. That's just too many in one problem. But I think you get the idea. You circle all of those things, test around them. And there would be nothing this hard on your test. It's just too much. Like, that's too many intervals. All right, so we aren't going to do the word problem type. So then that leaves me with just one last kind. And this is the kind where you have to get a common denominator. Why can't I just clear the fractions? Because it's greater than 0. And you aren't allowed on this kind to multiply by x on both sides. So that means you've got to be able to get common denominators and add them together. This is a skill that's not only like math teachers think is important, it's on your next test. You've got to be able to add common denominators. And then once you get the common denominators, get it all added together, then you got to figure out what makes the top 0, what makes the bottom 0. So solve this one. This is your first of the 3 major kinds that I want to show you before the end of the hour that are like on your test. Then again, it would just be a little too hard to give you the test tomorrow. I think it would not go so well. So instead, tomorrow we'll take a practice test, grade it by the end of the hour, and then the real test will be Friday. Okay, Bodie, let's get started with this. We have to get a common denominator, so you multiply by the other denominator. So for this one, what do I multiply by?
X.
Good. For the other one, what do I multiply by?
X plus 1.
Yep. And the reason we don't just cancel them off is because then we'd be exactly back where we were a second ago. And now, on the top, I have x plus 1. I can do better than that. I can actually put them together. X plus 1 is 2x plus 1 on the top. And on the bottom, don't multiply it out. I know you can, but then you just have to factor it again. So leave it factored, and there we go. How many of you got to that point? Excellent. Any questions about that? It's called finding a common denominator. All right, now you've got to figure out what makes the top 0. Pro tip, set this equal to 0 if you want to, and then subtract 1, divide by 2, and it'll be negative 1/2. That makes it equal to 0, though, and I want it to be bigger than 0, so that spot does not work. But it's a key spot. Then 0 is a key spot, and negative 1 is a key spot. And none of those work The things that make the bottom 0 just kill the function. They don't make it greater than 0. And then my suspicion is when I put in a big number like 1, anything bigger than 0, I bet it's going to work, but I'm going to check. I get positive over positive, positive. Remember how that works? I don't care exactly what number I get. I just care that I got all positive numbers. And that makes it positive, and that makes it bigger than 0, and then it makes it work. So it works out there. Nate, did you check the other intervals yet? All right, then you get to check this one with me. When I stick -2 in, you tell me whether they come out negative or positive. What's the top come out? All that matters is that it's negative. Okay, so it comes out negative over, what's the bottom come out? Negative, positive, positive, negative, negative, negative. Remember, we're sticking -2 in. Negative, negative? Is that what you said? Okay, good. What is a negative over a negative negative? It's negative. Is that bigger than 0? So then I cross this area out. I would suspect that this part would work right here. But I'd check it. It's negative, something between -0.5 and -1 is negative 0.75. I'll show you. We're going to put negative 0.75, and it really isn't that hard because you're just telling if it's positive or negative. Negative 0.75. That's like 3/4. All right. This top comes out negative. That first thing is negative. And 1 is bigger than 0.75 though, so that comes out positive. It comes out negative over negative positive. Overall, that's positive, and that's bigger than 0. So yeah, I thought it was going to work, and it worked. Last thing I have to check is something small, like between 0 and -0.5, like negative 0.25. In my head, I can do this quick, and I come out with positive, negative, positive. That comes out negative. That's not bigger than 0, so it doesn't work in there. Okay, there's your final answer. This is intense. Now, what your homework is to open up the file called Solving and Rational Inequalities Review Homework. This is the only file today that says homework, other than the homework answer key, okay? Open up the Schoology quiz, the file, it's a PDF, that says homework in it. And now let's find some that we can skip. And then this is not due tomorrow, it's due Friday. Okay, because these are hard, they take a long time. I'm a reasonable person. All right, now it's a handwritten one, which is a little weird, I know. But that means that the teacher picked these problems specifically because they didn't like the pre-done worksheet. That means these are better, they're more like the test. All right, so I think we can skip problem 6. Is that it? And I think that keeps it reasonable. And remember, this isn't due until, not tomorrow, but the next day. Okay, so get some of this done tonight. And your job then is just to be really, really ready for Friday. I'm warning you, in my opinion, hardest test you've had so far, just because so much algebra. Okay, so practice. Yes. Okay, I gotta stop the video. And that's all I got for you for today.